Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanuranjana Nandana Brajajanara Jasodanandana Brajajanuranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Tira Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanuranjana Dana Brajajanara Jasodanandana Brajajanuranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayom Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivijagacharya Astatara Srimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Core Community. Seeing the deities from a distance, they're very beautiful deities. Huh? I will. I will. How long have you had these deities? 4 years. Jaipur? Very special. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This evening, Krishna permitting, we'll be completing Canto 10, Chapter 12, which is the story of the killing of Aghasura. And there's several sections. This is the final section. Of course, Shukadeva Goswami is narrating, and Maharaj Parikshit is hearing. And the beginning section of the chapter, this is a little chapter overview or summary. The cowherd boys are in the spotlight, and their relationship with Krishna and what they do together and their feelings together and so forth. And after describing all of that, Shukadeva Goswami concludes the section by describing, in kind of like an ecstatic mode, how fortunate, how many lifetimes of pious activities must these cowherd boys have undergone in order to achieve this good fortune. Of course, it's not just by pious activities you can become a cowherd boy, but spiritual piety, not just material piety. And there's several important verses in that connection. That section ends and begins with Shukadeva Goswami saying that the Lord summoned Aghasura by his Yogamaya potency. It was demon killing time of the day, around 11 o'clock. So Aghasura shows up, 8 miles long, looks like this. The cowherd boys see, what's this? They speculate. Some are afraid, some are not at all afraid. They decide, even if he is a demon, Krishna will protect us, let's go explore. So in they go, and the calves follow, and Krishna becomes stunned by his own Yogamaya potency. Very special. There are a few explicit examples of this in his childhood pastimes, but he enjoys being stunned by his own Yogamaya potency. And the stunning contemplation is, he wanted the cowherd boys to not enter the mouth of Aghasura demon, and he's all powerful. He doesn't have to do anything. He just Satya Sankalpa Shakti. He just wills things and voila, they happen. But he was willing and it didn't happen. They entered the mouth of Aghasura and he became bewildered. What to do? The omniscient Supreme Lord became bewildered, right? And then he knew what to do. And it's in that moment, this is important because it comes in the concluding section, just before this, that in that moment of Yogamaya, Aghasura rendered some devotional service. Not knowing devotional service, but he was making an arrangement for the cowherd boys to again be rejoined with Krishna. That's a nice service. Cowherd boys were going to be feeling, and they did, feel apprehension from the absence of Krishna's association. So that little devotional service entitled him to liberation. Not just Sayuja liberation, but Sarupya liberation. So Krishna entered the mouth, Krishna expanded, Krishna's body expanded to such proportions that the Aghasura demon suffocated, his life air popped through the top of his head because there was no other opening to leave. A light was in the sky, in the air, and when Krishna left, that soul of Aghasura entered into the body of Krishna, and that ended that section. And then there comes another section where Shukadeva Goswami is appreciating the nature of Krishna. The nature of Krishna is giving liberation to a demon. And there's a whole lot of discussion about what happens to the demons that are killed by Krishna and the regard that Krishna has for those demons and the nature of the all-merciful Supreme Lord. So it's like there's a whole, it's an important discussion. The demons killed by Krishna achieve something of greater fortune than the demons killed by other forms of the Lord. Krishna's mercy is very special in many ways, including demon killing. And that section ends with Shukadeva Goswami then just speaking directly to Maharaj Parikshit about the whole pastime, and then Maharaj Parikshit asking Shukadeva, so that the focus shifts from Shukadev's narrating to Maharaj Parikshit asking. And he asks an important question that leads into the next chapter. He says, wait a minute, how did all of this happen? Because there's a whole year that passed, because there's speaking in terms of past tense. There's a whole year that passed where this pastime of killing Aghasura was not known in Braja until 1 year later. I'll read the verse. O great sage, how could things done in the past, like 1 year ago, have been described as being done at the present? Lord Sri Krishna performed this pastime of killing Aghasura during his Komara age. How then, during his Pauganda age, could the boys have described this incident as having happened recently? So there's details. This is just a review, but Pauganda age begins at 6, and Kumara age ends at 5. So he was killed at 5, and they didn't tell everybody in Braj until they were 6. So what happened to that 1 year? How is it that this is narrated as if it happened just recently? And so that the secret is disclosed in the beginning of the next chapter. Then comes this evening's text, 42. It's a 10, 12, 42. Those of you that like to look up the verse, 10, 12, 42. O greatest yogi, my spiritual master, kindly describe why this happened. I'm very much curious to know about it. I think that it is nothing but another illusion due to Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada's purport here. Krishna has many potencies. Parasya Shaktir Vivadaiva Shruyate, mentioned in Sritashvatara Upanishad, quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita. The description of Aghasura was disclosed after 1 year. Some act of Krishna's potency must have been involved. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit was very curious to know about this, and he requested Shukadeva Goswami to explain it. So in the verse, the word Maya is used. Harer Maya. Harer Maya, the Maya of Hari, the potency of Hari. Maya here means the Lord Shakti, which is expert at making the unexpected happen. Because it is here called the Lord's Maya or Harer Maya, it cannot mean anything except Yoga Maya. The eternal associates of the Lord can fall into illusion by this energy alone. Meaning, the negative is they're not subject to Mahamaya. So if they say Hari or Harer Maya, it means Yoga Maya. Jiva Goswami writes in his commentary, this causes great curiosity, O Shukadev, endowed with the greatest bhakti, Mahayogin. Nothing about the Lord is unknown to you. And Shukadev Goswami may say, but this is very confidential knowledge. And Maharaj Parikshit replies, O Guru, nothing should be kept secret from the disciple. He then tries to guess the truth. He's asking and then he's supposing. It was an appearance for the boys, this Harer Maya. It was created by the inconceivable power of the Lord, Hare. The other Maya, not his personal energy, takes away all discriminatory ability. It could not be otherwise. Without his Maya, it is not possible, since it is not possible for the cowherd boys to be wielded by anything else. He's asking and speculating. Sanatana Goswami's commentary reads, how is this possible? Tell me how this happened. I'm eager to hear or have a doubt. Please explain this astonishing event, O Master, endowed with the highest bhakti, Mahayogin. You know everything about the Lord's actions. Shukadev, but this is most secret. Maharaj Parikshit, O instructor, you should not hide anything from the disciple. Describe the words of the boys 1 year later. Kautu halam. The word Maya Hare indicates that this is not the Maya which takes away all discrimination. Without your Maya, this situation could not take place, for it is impossible that the cowherd boys would be put into illusion. And here comes the last verse of the whole chapter. Actually, it's not. There's two more. So it's his last verse. Maharaj Parikshit says, O my Lord, my spiritual master, although we are the lowest of Kshatriyas, we are glorified and benefited because we have the opportunity to always hearing from you the nectar of the pious activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here's Srila Prabhupada's purport. The pious activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are very confidential. It is not ordinarily possible to hear such activities unless one is very, very fortunate. Parikshit Maharaj placed himself as a Kshatra Bandhava, which means the lowest of the Kshatriyas. The qualities of the Kshatriyas are described in Bhagavad Gita, and although the general quality of the Kshatriya is Ishvara Bhav, the tendency to rule, a Kshatriya is not supposed to rule over a Brahmana. Thus, Maharaj Parikshit regretted that he had wanted to rule over the Brahmanas and had therefore been cursed. You know the history. Cursing of Maharaj Parikshit. So he's calling himself the lowest of the Kshatriyas because he was placing himself above a Brahmana. And that was an offense, and it resulted in his being cursed. He considered himself the lowest of Kshatriyas. Dhanam Ishvara Bhavas Cha Kshatram Karma Swabhavajam. Bhagavad Gita 18:43. There was no doubt that Maharaj Parikshit had all good qualities of a Kshatriya, but as a devotee he presented himself with submissiveness and humility as the lowest of the Kshatriyas, remembering his act of wrapping a dead serpent around the neck of a Brahmana. A student and disciple has the right to ask the Guru about any confidential service, and it is the duty of the Guru to explain these confidential matters to his disciple. And the last section for this evening, Parikshit speaks. This is Vishwanath's commentary. Parikshit speaks. Oh, Guru, This implies I'm your student, and because of the rule, the guru will teach esoteric topics to the devoted student. Please tell me what should be told. His devotion is indicated by his own efforts through the words, quote, I drink the nectar. And Jiva Goswami writes, his commentary, out of eagerness to hear, Parikshit encourages Shukadev to speak. The plural is used because of Parikshit's friends were also included. But he also uses the plural to indicate great respect as a disciple of his guru. He calls himself the lowest of Kshatriyas out of humility. Quote, I drink constantly the topics of Krishna, made very attractive, punyam, since they come from you, O Guru. As your disciple, I am fortunate and successful. I am even more fortunate to hear from you the sweet topics of Krishna. I am the most fortunate to hear these topics constantly. That nearly completes the chapter. The last verse of the chapter flips back to Sutta Goswami narrating all this. One of the features of the Bhagavatam that's described within the Bhagavatam itself and particularly emphasized by the Acharyas, we're going to hear some more about that tomorrow morning. Jiva Goswami is very specific in indicating chronology is not followed by Shukadev Goswami. Mostly it's chronological, but there are events that just aren't in narrated in chronological sequence. Like one of them is the killing of Vyomasura. And Jiva Goswami explains, actually it took place much earlier when Krishna was much younger, but it's not narrated until later. And another example we're going to hear tomorrow morning. The Krishna's visit to Kurukshetra for the solar eclipse, that's narrated way towards the end of the 10th canto, chapter 82, way towards the end. And Jiva Goswami gives this reason, that reason, the other reason, and concludes it actually took place shortly after Krishna's killing Kamsa. Now, it couldn't take too much shortly after because residents of Dwarka come to take part in the solar eclipse. But it's not like way towards the end of Krishna's Lila. And he gives reasons why. Well, one of the reasons why is it mentioned who is attending include people that were already killed in the battle of Kurukshetra, like Duryodhana and Drona and others. So it had to take place certainly before the Kurukshetra battle. It didn't take place toward the end of Krishna's pastimes. Anyway, the point is, everything that Shukadev Goswami is narrating is simultaneously logical, not necessarily chronological, and it's very spontaneous because from time to time, because he's a Rasika Bhakta, from time to time he just interrupts the flow of the discussion and comes out with some burst of ecstatic expression, appreciating something. His joy of appreciating the good fortune of Nanda and Jasoda, for example. Or in this chapter, the good fortune of the cowherd boys. And then in speaking about, just because he's narrating the pastime, then he just spins out into this expression of ecstasy of how fortunate they are. When he thinks about how fortunate they are, he adds in all the residents of Vrindavan, they're so fortunate. It's a an important teaching in the whole of Srimad Bhagavatam to prepare us for Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. There's 9 cantos that lead up to Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, so that we can understand the exalted nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By appreciating the exalted nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how exalted are the residents of Vrindavan, like in this chapter. There are those who are Dasya Bhaktas, and they worship the Supreme Lord very wonderfully as the personality of Godhead. The yogis, they meditate upon the personality of Godhead after many, many lifetimes of austerity, fixing their mind upon the form of the personality of Godhead. But in their meditation, they cannot even touch a particle of dust from the Lord's lotus feet. Those who are Gyanis, who spend extensive time and effort to meditate on Brahma Sukh, the happiness of Brahman. These cowherd boys and the residents of Vrindavan, they're playing with him, and they're with him all the time, like their dear friend or their beloved lover or their protected son. So the very special love that Krishna has for Braja, and the very special love that the residents of Braja have for him, the exaltedness of that love is certainly Lord Chaitanya's teaching, and Lord Chaitanya's teaching is none other than Srimad Bhagavatam's teaching. Just a little tangential sharing on that point. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared that the natural commentary of Vedanta Sutra was already made by the author of Vedanta Sutra, so no need for additional commentary because he has perfectly given commentary in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. Although at the same time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the commentary of Sridhar Swami as a suitable commentary on, or the standard commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. And thus, Lord Chaitanya did not assign anyone or do it himself to give commentary on Vedanta Sutra. So Jiva Goswami, great acharya in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, knowing those points that I just mentioned, in a very expert way, he made commentary on Vedanta Sutra without calling it Vedanta Sutra commentary. Pretty clever. Because he made a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a commentary on Vedanta Sutra. Those of you that are familiar with Chaitanya Charitamrita, the discussion between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Prakashananda Saraswati, and Prakashananda Saraswati saying, criticizing, why are you singing and dancing with fanatics? Sannyasis are not supposed to do that. They're supposed to study Vedanta Sutra. And of course, Lord Chaitanya said, my spiritual master told me I'm a fool, not capable of understanding Vedanta Sutra. So he just told me to chant Hare Krishna. And I did, and something happened. And I went back to him and I said, what about this that just happened? He said, oh, this is very good. Quoting Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a sign of attaining the highest stages, this ecstasy of love of God that you have achieved. Please continue. So when they got to discussing Vedanta Sutra, when you read that section, you'll find that Lord Chaitanya detailed that Vedanta Sutra has 3 parts, 3 sections, Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana. And the composition of Vedanta Sutra is there's 4 parts. The first 2 parts are Sambandha. The next part, the third part is Abhideya. And the final part is Prayojana. So the commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam follows the same, Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana. Jiva Goswami's commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam has the same 3 parts. There's 4 parts that are connected to Sambandha, 1 part that's connected to Abhideya, and the final part is connected to Prayojana. And the divisions of those first 4 parts follow the statements of Vedanta Sutra. So some commentators have explained, those have commented on the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. He doesn't say this is Vedanta Sutra 1.2.3. He just makes the statement, which is a summary of a Vedanta Sutra statement. And then he supports his statement, which is a Vedanta Sutra statement, by Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is commenting on Vedanta Sutra. Then he has other supportive material that support what Srimad Bhagavatam says. And then he deals with, some people will argue against this idea. They say such and such, and the counter argument to such and such is this. To that they'll argue, no, that isn't correct because, and it'll defeat that. He's making a commentary on Vedanta Sutra without calling it a commentary on Vedanta Sutra. Very clever. Very clever. And as the principal source for support of the Srimad Bhagavatam statements are the statements of Sridhar Swami, the chief commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam, and then some other noted reference sources. And the whole system of Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole system of making this commentary, it has, listen carefully. If you were going to be a worldwide acharya, what would you want to do? You would want to establish that the source, in this case Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has the highest teachings. Anyone that's in some order, it wants to say their original teacher has the highest teachings, whoever they are. That's what they want to say. So what he does, the strategy of the Sandarbhas is Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest teaching. That's number 1. Then the next is Lord Chaitanya's teachings are the same as the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then the conclusion is, therefore, Lord Chaitanya's teachings are the highest teachings. A equals B, B equals C, so C equals A. That's his strategy. That's the Sandarbhas. Because it starts with glorification of Lord Chaitanya. That's where it starts. His Ishtadev is Lord Chaitanya. And he wants to, as Lord Chaitanya wanted to do, he wants to talk about Krishna. So to talk about Krishna, you have to make reference to authorities that know about Krishna. So the best of authorities is Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he goes through the different parts of Sambandha again. So now what triggered going into that little thing, digression, was what's happening within Srimad Bhagavatam itself. Sutta Goswami is narrating, going back to Canto 1, he's narrating to Shaunaka and the sages. But he's narrating what Shukadeva Goswami has said. And Shukadeva Goswami is narrating what he learned from his father, the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Vyasadeva's giving the realization that was told to him by Narada, which was received from Brahma, which came from Krishna. He's giving the essence of all the Vedas to us in a silver platter, in a very, very sweet and palatable form, specifically that which teaches that the love of Krishna is the highest form of love. That's Lord Chaitanya's teaching. And therefore it's in Srimad Bhagavatam. And so we're hearing Maharaj Parikshit understanding that this, the cowherd boys becoming bewildered, that something that happened a year ago was something that happened presently, that illusion is only possible by Yogamaya. So how did all this, please narrate the history, give the Puranic description of the unfolding of the cowherd boys lapsing into forgetfulness for 1 year. So that leads into chapter 13, which is what happened during that 1 year. So it takes a while to get to what happened in that 1 year. But in a nutshell, when Brahma put the calves and the cowherd boys in the cave, he did that using his mystic potency. He didn't just literally kidnap them like, a modern day kidnapper would. By mystic potency, he placed them in a cave and sealed the cave. And for 1 year, think of little boys that are 5 years old that don't eat for a whole year. Not possible. They'll get hungry. So they were there in the cave for a whole year. The original cowherd boys, Krishna's eternal associates, are in the cave for a whole year. And they were forgetful. They were able to, they were placed there by Brahma's mystic power, but they were sustained by Krishna's mystic power. And then when it was time for the pastimes to be resumed, the cowherd boys had grown 1 year's worth, because Krishna, in his pastimes in Braja, he was the cowherd boys and calves for 1 year, and they also grew 1 year's worth. And then Krishna withdrew his expansions that looked like the cowherd boys, and by his mystic power he brought the cowherd boys back to the place where they were having lunch before Brahma kidnapped them. And as far as they were understanding, but a moment had passed. In fact, they remark when it comes at the end of the pastime, "Oh, Krishna, you're so attached. You've been only away for a moment. You can't bear separation for us for even a moment. Sit down and let's finish lunch." Yogamaya covered them, and that was what the question was. It must have been. It was a speculation of Maharaj Parikshit. It must have been, because the cowherd boys can't be bewildered by the regular kind of Maya. It has to be Krishna's special Yogamaya. It covered them to think that no time had passed when a year had passed. How is it possible? So Maharaj Parikshit, wanted to hear the workings of Krishna's Yogamaya potency. Now, just one other comment, and the other comment is something that we hear from our founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, the importance of hearing all of Krishna's pastimes, including his creation pastimes. And in fact, it's called in the Bhagavatam and the purports, it's a pastime. Creation of the cosmic manifestation is a pastime. It's Krishna's energy acting under his direction. It's not the Yogamaya, the internal potency Yogamaya, it's the external potency Maya, or Yogamaya Samavrata, the reflection or partial expansion of the Yogamaya potency, but it's Krishna's pastime. Creation of the material realm is a pastime. It's a material pastime. In that sense, it's temporary. Now you see it, now you don't. But it's in the category of pastime. all of what Krishna does, all of Krishna's energies, doing things, it's pastime. But the intimacy of his pastimes are in their superlative position in Vrindavan. That's what Bhagavatam wants to teach us. So there's the sambandha portion. Everything has its connection with the source of emanation. And then there's acting within that relationship or establishing that relationship through loving service. And then the mature fruit of that loving service. And the Bhagavatam is teaching us those things. Step by step by step. Again, one more time, not necessarily in chronological order, but in very spiritually logical order or ecstatic logical order of Shukadeva Goswami. He's not confined by our yardsticks of chronology, although much of it is following chronology, but not always. Because there's lessons to learn that are unfolded by his in the course of his narrating to bring the reader or the hearer to the position of accepting shelter of Krishna in Vrindavan. That's where the Bhagavatam wants to take us. That's where the teachings of Lord Chaitanya want to take us. That's where our chanting of the holy name wants to take us. And it can be very, very simple, preliminary. Awakening a forgetfulness to the stage of remembrance, and then gradual progression to attachment, and then the mature stage of love. As with chanting, so also the teachings, they parallel to bring us to that position. So we're hearing that just at the end of this 12th chapter. Maharaj Parikshit is enthusiastic and very grateful to hear from such a qualified speaker as Shukadev. And he's appealing to him, please give this esoteric knowledge. Don't hold it back. I'm your disciple. I'm eager to hear. Plus, it's already, 5 days have passed, and I only have 7 to go. So, please narrate. His eagerness is inspiring Shukadev to speak everything. Okay, so let's see if there's some thoughts on this topic or comments, questions, anything you like. We're doing our little pandemic cleansing of the microphone before we hand it around to people.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, you talked about some beautiful pastimes of Krishna and Braj and getting absorbed. So I just wondered this is a confusion I have when I think that our getting absorbed is such a bliss as as we hear these pastimes internally, and then at the same time we have there are services which needs certain level of passion. So is there, both are services. Getting absorbed is also a service to Krishna in a sense, and also getting engaged in the services that are there outside. So is there I know we always say any service is good, but after at certain point, is there any that one should be more involved, or is there a better one? We cannot say better one also. I don't think I'm expressing my question right. But when we get engaged in our, the services where, at least, other souls we're trying to bring other souls closer to Krishna, but at the same, and that needs certain level of, passion and, being engaged in outside. but then getting absorbed internally.
It sounds like you're asking three different things in the same time. One is spiritual material balance. Another is there a stage where we do less material and more spiritual? And a third question is, what about giving bhakti to other people? Where does that fit into the picture?
Yeah.
Did I get it?
Yes.
Okay. The first part of the three-part question has its answer in Bhagavad Gita. Mama nusmara yudhyacha. Yudhya means fighting, but Prabhupada's translated as always think of me and engage in your prescribed duty. So you're not a warrior, so your prescribed duty is something else. But the instruction of Krishna for you and for me, for us, is both. Always think of me and engage in prescribed duty. So the prescribed duty is, you use the word outside, in the world, that's the material. So we do. And we remember Krishna. So the remembrance of Krishna is weak because of forgetfulness. And there's the sadhana is there to help cleanse away the forgetfulness and bring awake the remembrance. So we do our sadhana. It's not full remembrance and absorption yet, but it's a practice, a sadhana, to get to the stage. So in the mature stage, do we do less? This is the next question. Do we less of the prescribed duty thing and more of the spiritual absorption thing? And in stages of life, that's what ashram is. From grahastha ashram to vanaprastha ashram to sannyas ashram. There is a progression, and it's not necessarily like a bucket. You move from this bucket to that bucket, and then you move from that bucket to the next bucket. It's rather a progression of consciousness where there's diminishing of worldly involvement type of bhakti, and the prescribed duty shifts more to the direct bhakti activities. There's a terminology in Bhakti Sandarbha that Jiva Goswami uses that indicates how to spiritualize your duties. And it's recognizing, it's very simple, it's just recognizing who you are. That is, I exist for the pleasure of Krishna. The tiny living entity is meant for the pleasure of Krishna. Prabhupada writes about this. He doesn't use the Jiva Goswami language, but you're familiar with Prahlad Maharaj's teaching of the 9 processes of bhakti, and one of them is dasyam. And there's a very short paragraph. You can look it up later. Canto 7, Chapter 9, the 9 stages of bhakti or processes of bhakti. For dasyam, Prabhupada writes, there is a saying that goes like this, that one who accepts within themselves, my existence is for the pleasure of Krishna, that person can deliver others, which is your third question. I'll say it again. The acceptance that my existence is for the pleasure of Krishna, that person then has the potency to deliver others. So you interact with others, and when you interact with others and you're carrying that understanding of yourself, there's potency to deliver others. It doesn't have to be, formalized, but it's spiritual. It's a spiritual power that one carries, so it has that clear understanding of oneself. And the second thing Prabhupada says, in addition, just by carrying that conception of oneself, all the other processes of bhakti are accomplished. That's his definition of dasyam. Nice, very short, very simple, very sweet, very powerful. So, yes, according to individual spiritual evolution, whatever that might look like for different people, there will be less in the external duties of the world just by stages of life, naturally so. And when that is replaced then with more emphasis on directly devotional activity, naturally so, not artificially so, just naturally so, as Krishna consciousness evolves, not neglecting duties, prematurely or arbitrarily or whimsically, but naturally so. Yes, there is a progression, but it's always prescribed duty and always think of me. That doesn't change with stages. Prescribed duty may evolve, and a remembrance of Krishna may evolve. The form that it takes will evolve, but so less on that side and more on this side. And then as far as extending bhakti to others, there's different methods, techniques, technologies, and ways. Some do it this way, that way, the other way, but the principle is spiritual potency, and you carry spiritual potency in one of the very clear, simple ways is just having a clear conception of who you are. It's not a technology or technique. It's a spiritual empowerment from Krishna. You carry Krishna Shakti, and by carrying Krishna Shakti, you can empower others to carry Krishna Shakti from any position, within the varnashram structure. And as that bhakti matures, then your Krishna Shakti has also matured. So you'll become a more effective instrument to pass that on to others. But you can't pass on to others what you don't have. So you have to get that empowerment, and that empowerment is your own devotion. So you cultivate your own devotion. And as a follower of Lord Chaitanya, strive to extend it to others according to your capacity. And even desiring to do that, empowerment comes. Ideas come, opportunities that we didn't see before that just show up somewhere, somebody, something. And you're thinking that way, and so you're the conductor of Krishna Shakti. How's that for the 3 points?
Yeah, very nice, Maharaj. I could not express it, but you understood, and thank you so much.
Okay. Anything further? Okay.
Guru Maharaj, you are saying like how against the will of Krishna, the cowherd boys are entering into the Agarasura's mouth.
They're doing what?
The cowherd boys are entering into the
Mouth of
Agasura. My question is that nothing will happen without the sanction of the Lord. So how should we understand? How can I understand that it's against the will of the Lord?
Yes, well, in the case of the cowherd boys and us, it's quite different. But in the case of the cowherd boys, it's a pastime. They were contemplating, you heard the section because we covered it. There were different groups of cowherd boys. Some were saying, oh, it looks like a demon. Others are saying, hey, it looks like a statue. Krishna probably put it here for us to play. Some are saying, wait a minute, this looks like a big serpent and he's here to kill us. And some started to run away. And then those that started running away heard others say, no, 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 don't worry. And then finally the conclusion was, whatever it is, even if it's the worst, Krishna will protect us. And we're just having a great time. We're like playful cowherd boys. Let's go explore, see what's inside. So off they went. And it was they were feeling protected. So the sanction of the Supreme Lord is there, that they're feeling protected, and he protects. They're totally innocent, not, they're little boys, 5-year-old boys. Hey, let's go explore. So Krishna's protection and sanction are both there. So the pastime could be performed. The pastime included by Yogamaya summoning Aghasura to come so he could deliver him. He had that plan, many steps ahead before it happened. And why? Why would Krishna want to liberate a demon? He's very compassionate. There's other explanations that go along with it. So his sanction was there because it's part of a Lila. The cowherd boys aren't going to do anything other than what Krishna wants. Although in the verse it says he didn't want, and they went anyways. And he didn't stop them. He could have hey, don't go in there. Or all kinds of things could have, without even saying. He wanted. So they could experience separation from him, and then they could experience being with him after separation. That was his apprehension when they entered the mouth. Not that they would die, but they can't bear separation from him even for a moment. So what's going to happen if they go inside this body of this big serpent? They won't be able to see me. But it was a sanction. That was your question.
Raj, there was some little mention about speculation when you know something and you know something there, and to connect these two dots. So my question is, if the speculation is a result of not inquiring how to connect these two?
Your question specifically is, if you want to connect two things, how can you do that without speculating?
Or is the speculation happens when I don't inquire?
No, what in this case, they were inquiring and then speculating. That in a day, Maharaj Parikshit, he was inquiring. Could you explain? And then he's supposing. Looks to me, it must be, the logical conclusion is it must be such and such, because it couldn't be otherwise. But, that's not, he's looking for confirmation. But, it's what you said is not necessarily the case. If I don't inquire, then I'm going to speculate. That was what you were saying. It's that the cause of speculation is not inquiring. You can do both. But he's looking for confirmation. Looks to me like such and such. Is that so?
So when Parikshit Maharaj is doing like that, but if at my level, if
that's different.
That's different.
But you just asked an open-ended question. Okay. Anything?
So, when we give Krishna Bhakti to others,
When we give Krishna Bhakti to others,
There are two categories, right? So some people, they don't want to receive.
that's
Some
right.
people, they cannot receive mercy. So in that case, how do we?
You have to use your discretion about um, whether it's going to result in offense. And you know, it requires, in some cases, with those two cases you mentioned, in some cases it's, the preliminary is just establishing a relationship of trust between you and the other person. That is to say, you don't try to explain, you just try to establish trust in that relationship. That's preliminary, because without trust in the relationship, even if you say something, it won't go in, even if they may even be a little inquisitive if there isn't trust. Well, I don't know. If you have, so you display good character and good quality, and that you be trustworthy, it garners trust. And then depending upon the level of trust, you may say. Now, for let's take Harinam and book distribution. We may say all kinds of things and chant to the public that they don't want to hear, and they're hearing anyways, because it's enjoined by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that they will benefit just by hearing. Even if they don't like it, they run the other way. Beneficial just by hearing. Better that they hear and run away than they don't hear. So there are circumstances when we engage in book distribution and we are encouraging people that don't want to hear. And then there are some cases where they just leave, and some cases where the spiritual potency of your making the gesture to help them understand and hear, something happens and magic happens and they become more accepting than they were initially. So that's the Krishna factor, or the gray factor. It's not just black and white. But that's where the judgment has to come, and this spiritual empowerment. So Krishna inspires you from within when to say, what not to say, how to say. One of the things that you want at the end result, regardless of everything else, is that there's an impression of appreciation. Appreciation says, this is a nice person. That's the investing in the relationship of trust. Because you're not just representing yourself, you're representing Vaishnavas. And Vaishnavas may in general be judged, or Hare Krishna devotees may be judged by one individual's action with another. Wholesale acceptance or wholesale rejection. So it's a life of responsibility to act as an instrument. So Krishna will help you. We'll make mistakes as we go along, and hopefully learn. Anything? Still, okay. Yeah.
Maharaj, is there any books written by devotees that talk about how Vedanta Sutras are the Srimad Bhagavatam is a commentary of Vedanta Sutra?
Not that I know of.
The reason I ask that is some of us accept, okay, yeah, Srimad Bhagavatam is
You just accept it in principle without necessarily the scholarship
Mm.
of this sutra is explained in that part of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, perhaps, one place to look is Baladev Vidyabhusan's Govindabhasya, where the sutras are there, and the commentary likely explains the sutra in terms of a verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. But it's, not precisely what you're asking. It's indirectly what, a source to look for.
Yes, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I don't feel it.
But there's no recordings of Mirabai. I don't understand what you're saying. Can you take the microphone, because there are people that are remote that can't hear you probably.
Like when she sings Payo Ram Dhanu Payo, or Annamacharya sings song that we can feel the love. Like
But I'm trying. You said that before, and I want to get some clarification. It's songs that they've written that modern singers sing. That's what you're speaking about?
the lyrics they have written, the song writing.
Could you
like,
speak into the microphone?
the song writing, like
Okay.
it's full of love, and they are immersed in the love. But for me, it's like an effort. I
What-
want Krishna because that's
Where's the effort? The effort is to do what?
my effort is like, I know in the end my goal is to reach Krishna, and I want to love as they love, but mine is an effort. It's not natural, like how they feel. They are immersed in love.
Okay. Now I think so. There's sadhana. There's stages of bhakti, according to Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Devotion or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There's 3 stages, and there's subdivisions of those. But there's practice, there's spontaneous, and there's love. So you're saying they're spontaneous and full of love, and I'm not there. So what do? I want to get there. That's your question. Okay, but the effort is part of bhakti. In the practice stage, it's effort. Why? Because we're covered. We're covered by layers and layers and layers of covering of different kinds. Largely, it's ignorance in different categories. So it takes time to remove that covering. And the process takes effort. Cleansing takes effort. So there's nothing harmful or there's nothing wrong with you. There's a delay between the effort and the mature stage. That's nothing new. Here's a seed. And you start to sprout the seed, and it's not yet producing fruits and flowers. It's just sprouting. There's some effort. Don't worry. It's part of the process of unfolding of that mature stage. Your appreciation for those that are in the mature stage is part of the process. It's part of the process. It may not take, may be easy for you to, from what I've just heard you say a few times, hearing the songs, the singing of the songs, the reciting of the poetry that these great personalities have written, filled with love, and that moves your heart. But it's effort. So you do the effort. That's the sadhana stage of bhakti. And by cleansing, 2 things, cleansing and awakening of that natural attraction, then it will come to the spontaneous stage. Effortless. Until then, it's effort. No problem. Make the effort. But make the effort in a way that's prescribed, not imagined or conjectured. Just, it's just authorized effort process. Do that. And don't worry about it takes effort because I'm not spontaneous yet. Continue the cleansing, it becomes. To become who they were, Mirabai, from when she was a little girl, she was on that platform. And so that's not us. But who knows who was she before she was Mirabai? Some great devotee taking birth as Mirabai. So it takes effort to become a great devotee. No problem. Make effort. It's an effort that's worthwhile. Is that okay? Okay. So we have something online?
This question is from Amara Mataji. It's a two-part question, Maharaj. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Brajavasis are always engaged in service to Krishna. I am trying to understand how their entering in the mouth of Aga was a service. And second part is...
For Krishna's pastimes. Krishna wanted, so they did. Service. Krishna wanted to rescue them. Krishna wanted them to experience separation from him and then again rejoining him. So that was the arrangement from Krishna's side.
The second part is...
You have to be a cowherd boy to really get it. Go ahead.
And what can be a practical application of this?
Practical application of this. Well, cultivate, back to, make some effort, cultivate the mood of whatever Krishna wants. That's what I want. You cultivate that way. In little things that you do each day. And the big things that you do in your lifetime. Cultivate that mood. Next.
Next question is from Giridhar Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj, you were teaching us deity service in mind. When can we do in mind? What are the do's and don'ts if we authorize to perform in the mind?
Okay. He's referring to a discussion the other day about deity worship and this nice story that Prabhupada tells. It's narrated in Nectar of Devotion or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of a Brahmana that was unable to do deity worship with his body, so he did within his mind because he heard it was authorized. And so he's in relation to deity worship in the mind. When is it appropriate? It sounds like his question. When you don't have the facility, either age or health, or in his case, the Brahmana was very, very, very poor, but he wanted to do really nice worship. So he did within his mind. But he was an elevated person. We should take whatever the little that we have, whatever that is, a fruit, flower, leaf, or water, and offer with love and devotion. We practice in practical terms, not so much within the mind. But even when we're doing the practical, it's not just the behavior of offering a flower, it's the devotion with which it's offered. That's the in the mind part. That's what we should be following. I think that's my answer to his question. That's it?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, in the back.
Hare
Right.
Krishna. Thank you for the nice class. I had a question about just the current set of events. Yesterday, Jasomati Nandan Prabhu passed away in
Yes.
India.
Yeah.
And few months ago, we lost Bhakti Charu Maharaj also. So it's just happening too soon and it's disturbing. So how do we How do we cope up with it? How do we handle this ourselves?
Well, the cause, Yasomati Nandan's health has been, as you probably know, really bad for a long time. And it's amazing that he has been able to sustain presence with us for as long as he has, because it's been really bad in, this crisis and that calamity and health thing for a long period of time. In his case, it wasn't, a COVID-19. It was something else, brain hemorrhage, and he became brain dead. You're aware of the cause, right? No. Well, excuse me, but I'm saying no because I heard Basu Ghosh put out a blast saying what happened was a heart attack that affected his brain and he became brain dead. He used that very word, brain dead. Wasn't it? It was clear from what he wrote. It wasn't COVID-19. Now, maybe he didn't know what he was talking about, but that's the report that I read. But whatever the cause, your question doesn't change. How do we cope with loss of great personalities, and especially one after the next? The fact that Srila Prabhupada's disciples are now in their senior stage of life, it's going to continue to happen because just the age factor is going to ensure that it will happen one after the next. Whatever their position in the society may be, this or that or the other, it's just one of the factors. As aging and disease, the death is also, it's an inevitable. So how to cope up with or contend with the inevitable is come to the spiritual platform of the understand. The real person is the soul. I mean, you've heard Prabhupada say this in his recorded lectures. We see, my father is gone. Why do you say he's gone? There he is lying there, which means you never saw your father. Even when he was around, you didn't see him because you didn't see the soul. So to the spiritual conception, even when in the physical presence of others, to see with spiritual conception. And if we don't go to a spiritual conception, then the loss will be another kind of loss. So the spiritual presence of Yasomati Nandan and Bhakti True Swami will not be felt because spiritually the spirit soul has gone. So take advantage, this is a reverse logic, but take advantage of the spiritual presence of those who are present. It doesn't mean that when their spiritual presence is now departed, you won't feel a loss, but then it becomes a spiritual loss instead of a material one. Not to say that your contemplation of the loss is a material one, but it's the answer to your question is to recognize the spiritual contribution that these very elevated souls, I mean, we don't appreciate people enough compared to when they leave. Then just today I was watching an interview of Yasomati Nandan, his interactions with Prabhupada, and from the very beginning, before he was initiated, he was introduced to Srila Prabhupada and had a very strong connection with Prabhupada and vice versa. Prabhupada told him before he was initiated, oh, you're from Surat. When after you've established yourself to your satisfaction in your career, go back to Surat and open a temple. It's a very wonderful place there. I've just been there. Very good reception. So that was the first instruction. Start a temple. You're not even initiated devotee. So, very special soul. And Prabhupada recognized it and so forth and so on. So they're no longer with us. So there are many such special souls that are still with us and recognize the specialness and take advantage of their association and emulate the vigor with which they assisted Prabhupada in bringing Lord Chaitanya's mission into the world. Doesn't mean you don't neglect your family and sanity and sensibilities, but take inspiration from these great personalities, and that helps to deal with their absence. Take inspiration from what they were and the gifts that they were endowed with and gave to the world, and appreciate them and emulate. You're younger. You're a younger generation than they. So take inspiration from. One was a sannyasi and the other was a grahasta, but they in their own way, with the gifts given to them by Krishna, they did an amazing service. So take inspiration. We miss their wonderful association. We can take inspiration from their accomplishments and their dedication. Is sustained, not a flash, but a sustained dedication. Incredible. Did you see Prime Minister Modi on his, whatever it was, page, Facebook or something page, offered praise to Yasomati Nandan? Great soul. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki